This episode is brought to you by Bumble. So, you want to find someone you're compatible with, specifically someone who's ready for a serious connection, totally open to having kids in the future, is a tall, rock-climbing Libra, and loves rom-coms with vegan pizzas on Tuesdays just as much as you do. Bumble knows that you know exactly what's right for you. So whatever it is you're looking for, Bumble's features can help you find it. Date now on Bumble.
All too often, I hear comments from husbands asking if they should change. Now, instead of me just saying flat out that you should change, I always like to help them truly see what's going on when their wife asks them to change. Sometimes changing isn't the right answer, and other times it's the absolute right answer. But only you can determine that. Stay tuned to hear how you can figure out if you should change or not. You are listening to the Husband Coach's Corner, the podcast designed to teach husbands how to love their wife each and every day and become better men in the process. I'm your host, Chris Scott, and welcome back to another episode. Welcome back to another episode of the Husband Coach's Corner, where we are talking about if you should change or not. Now, before we get started, I just want to let you know I'm offering free one-on-one coaching consults. During this consult, I hear about the issues you're having, and I help you develop some goals or refine your goals, and then I draft up a game plan to help you achieve these goals. If you're struggling in your marriage and need some help, then invest 30 minutes with me, and I will get you a tailored game plan that will help you achieve your marriage goals. To sign up for these consults, you can go to marriagedrills.com, or you can just use the link in the description box below. The only thing I ask is that if you schedule a time slot, that you show up. Lately, people have been scheduling time slots and they just haven't been showing up. And it makes it hard for me to offer this for free for everyone who is trying to better their marriage. So if you schedule a time slot, just please show up. And as always, if you got questions, you can send me an email at chris@marriagedrills.com. That's also listed in the description box below. So as we approach our topic today, I want you guys to think about reframing the way you look at how your wife is asking you to change your behavior. All right. Now, I'm not perfect at this, and I never want to come across as perfect. I struggle with this from time to time myself. So you can rest assured that this is not something I have mastered, but it is something that I do take myself through when I catch myself and not doing this. I do take myself through this process to help me reframe some things. And that's kind of what I want to help you with. So let's just go ahead and get started with asking why your wife wants you to change. Now, the importance with starting with why, it just cannot be stated enough. If you don't fully understand the reason for the change or the request from your wife to change, then you likely will not see the benefit in changing from your wife's perspective. All right, let that sink in. You're not seeing the change benefit from your wife's perspective. If you don't know why your wife wants you to change, then you need to ask her. It's that simple. You can ask her, what will you gain from me changing? That's one way. Or you can ask her, why do you want me to change? Right? Simple questions, and just hear the answer. Now, I will state that if your wife has already told you why she wants you to change, asking this question could aggravate her. So I wouldn't recommend asking it if you already know the reasons why she wants you to change. All right. So only ask this if you don't know the reasons why, or you've never heard the reasons why. But if you have, then that's great, because now you can see it from her perspective. Now, if you've heard the reason why from your wife, but you don't understand it, then go have a conversation with her to understand why the why is what it is, right? Because if you you don't understand it, then the rest of these steps are going to be extremely, extremely complicated for you. And you're just going to be guessing. And I don't ever want you to sit around guessing. So if you can get some concrete information from your wife, that's going to pay huge dividends to your ability to overcome this issue and ultimately meet what your wife is expecting you to meet. Now, assuming you had to go ask this question, once you know why your wife wants you to change, you can move on to the next question, which is, what does your wife want you to change? This is actually a really important thing to unpack. What is it that your wife wants you to change? It usually comes down to two things. It's either physical or emotional. All right. The thing that she wants you to change is either physical or emotional. Knowing what your wife is asking you to change can help you see where you need to examine yourself for deeper growth. Often there are more issues in the area that our wives are able to see that we can't see, but they're also probably only looking at symptoms of the deeper issue. Now, you will need to dig deeper to see if there is truly an underlying issue for the thing that she's asking you to change. And this would be a great time to talk things over with a mentor or a coach. And, shameless plug, you can talk this over with me by signing up for one of those consults. But what I'm going to do here today is break down the physical and the emotional for you. So let's start off with the physical change. If what she's asking you to change is physical, is it cosmetic or is it health driven? Our wives usually care way more about us than we care for ourselves. If your wife is trying to help you overcome some health issues, then it may be wise to adhere to her counsel, right? If she's trying to take care of you, you should probably adhere to what it is she is offering you in the way of advice. Now, it's often said that young men spend their youth destroying their health and old men spend their money trying to regain their health. So again, make wise choices about your physical needs if your health is at risk. And, I'll give you a story. Like my wife, she knows that I had high cholesterol, so she changed the way that we cooked at the house, and it helped me lower my cholesterol, but I didn't get to eat all the foods that I wanted to eat that she could cook. And, that was a way of her changing her behavior, but I had to change the way that I received her love for me. And that's really just an example of showing that our wives are going to probably do things that are in our best interest, and we just have to be willing to receive those. All right. Now, the other aspect of this could be cosmetic. Now, men, when we get married, we shouldn't just let ourselves go, right? Our wives have a physical attraction to us just as we do to them. So if your wife is asking you to groom more often or maybe hit the gym, think about that as an investment into your wife's attraction to you instead of her nagging you or just trying to get you to change. Like your wife is giving you the answer to the test. And I get it. We don't always want to be tested. We don't even like the idea that we are being tested. But the truth is, if your wife is telling you like, hey, it would be nice if you had a haircut every now and then, and, you like to be wild with your hair, maybe just get a haircut. It's okay. All right. Now, I will also add a disclaimer in here that I'm not telling you to change your self-image or self-perception to meet some cosmetic goal. Instead, what I want you to have is a positive outlook on the physical change request your wife is asking for. All right. So do that in a way that is genuine to you and not in a way that is commercial, if you will. I'm not saying like every man needs to have 6-pack abs or anything crazy like that, but if the conversation has come up and your wife is like, hey, maybe, we could work out together, or maybe you should work out a little bit more, or whatever the case may be, don't take that as a bad thing, right? Instead, take that as fuel to the fire and go go grind it out and get that attraction level up with your wife, because you have all the gain from this. All right. She's giving you the answer to the test. You have all the gain from this. Now, again, I'm not telling you that you have to do that. And this should obviously be measured against your marriage goals that you have set either as a husband or that you guys have set as a couple. So, if the change that she's asking you for is in line with that, then it's probably okay to, go ahead and make that change. Now, neither cosmetic or health related requests are bad on their own, but depending on how your relationship is going and how things work in your relationship, it may cause some resentment. So really tread carefully here and understand your marriage and your wife. All right. And if it gets to bear or to be too much, then you should probably seek third-party assistance through counselor or a friend, a mentor, a coach, whatever it may be. All right. Now, the second thing or category, if you will, for what your wife may be asking to change is emotional. Now, this one is probably more likely in the ballpark of where husbands are whenever I hear like, oh yeah, my wife wanted me to change something and I don't know if I should. It's usually one of two things. It's either a verbal or a physical action. Now, this is different than physical appearance, or physical health, like we talked about earlier. Verbal or physical actions could be something as simple as you don't like to clean dishes, right? And that's a physical action. Or it's something verbal where maybe you say something that really upsets your wife or makes her feel uncomfortable, but you don't want to change because that's just the way you've always talked. Maybe your wife asks you to speak a little bit more polite around company. And you're like, well, this is just the way that I talk. So she better get over it, or, they could leave or something like that. So just, giving you some examples off the top of my head. But this is by far the number one thing that I hear from husbands and wives when it comes to changes or demands that wives are making. For some reason, men are insensitive jerks. All right. Now, I don't mean this in a rude way to any man out there that's struggling with this, because I am probably in the same boat at times with the things that I may say, especially if I'm upset or if I'm caught in a moment. It happens, right? That's just the way that is life. But most men find a way to say things in a way that is not well received by their wife. And that's why this is probably where that issue is coming in. And remember, these are emotional triggers, right? So the thing that she's trying to get you to change is this emotional trigger that is happening in her when you either do the verbal or physical action and she doesn't like it. It makes her feel uncomfortable. And, that's very important. We'll talk about that here in a second.
This episode is brought to you by Bumble. So, you want to find someone you're compatible with, specifically someone who's ready for a serious connection, totally open to having kids in the future, is a tall, rock-climbing Libra, and loves rom-coms with vegan pizzas on Tuesdays just as much as you do. Bumble knows that you know exactly what's right for you. So whatever it is you're looking for, Bumble's features can help you find it. Date now on Bumble.
If your goal is to improve your relationship, you have to build trust in catering to your wife's emotions, even if you don't agree with them. Man, guys, I cannot stress this part enough. Even if you don't agree with them, you still have to cater to them, because the emotions in your wife is still your wife. Now, in this case, I always recommend making some form of change that your wife is requesting so you can safeguard security and trust in the relationship. Now, I've said it in previous episodes that once you lose trust and security in your relationship, it is absolutely hard to regain it. So you do not want to lose this, guys. You need to hold on to it as best you can, as long as you can, and in any way, shape, or form without letting it be degraded. So if your wife is asking you to make a change because there's an emotional trigger with the thing that you're doing, either verbal or physical, then you should really take heed to that. Now, we're going to talk about the impacts of these things that, or whatever the thing is that your wife is asking you to change. We're going to talk about the impacts of that on your marriage. And hopefully this will kind of bring the whole category or bring this all, full picture for you. Now, impacts on our marriage come in a variety of ways, but we're going to take a look at two. All right. These are the two most common. It's unmet needs and unmet expectations. The two most common things that I see are unmet needs and unmet expectations. I guarantee you, somewhere in your relationship, if your wife is asking to change something and you're on the fence, you are probably experiencing an unmet need, or she's experiencing an unmet need, or an unmet expectation. And truthfully, both of these can exist at the exact same time. So let's start with unmet needs. These are very simply the things that your wife needs you to do, and she sees it as only something you should do as her husband. All right. A common unmet need I hear from wives is their husband is not spending romantic time with them. And I'm not talking about sex. I'm talking about dates and stuff like that. You hear me talk about this often, that you should plan 30 minutes every day to spend with your wife to simply enjoy her and allow her to enjoy you. I also talk about going on dates with your wife. Since I do talk about those a lot, I'm not going to go further into it during this episode because that would just be really, really long. Instead, I want to help you see the how your actions may be impacting your marriage. Instead, I want to help you see how your actions may be impacting your marriage, so you can start to see through this a little bit differently. Now, unmet needs are one of the leading causes to depression and dissatisfaction in marriage, at least in America. I'm sure it's global, but in America, one of the leading causes to depression and dissatisfaction in marriage. I was talking with my wife a few days ago, and she mentioned that most divorces are because the wife decides to leave the husband, and very few husbands are actually being divorced now, leading the charge of the divorce. Let that just kind of sink in for a moment. Women are leaving the men. Now, the truth is, in my experience with coaching husbands, I found this to be true. So understanding consistently not meeting your wife's needs is going to hurt your marriage dramatically is probably one of the catalysts of truly making a decision if you're going to make this change or not. Now, unmet needs are very, very sensitive areas, right? If you as the husband are not meeting a need for your wife in the aspect of, sex, security, comfort, affection, all of these things that are needs to your wife. if you are not meeting those and she has to go outside of the marriage to find them, that's where, this depression and dissatisfaction comes in. And that means you have really done this consistently and it's caused some issues. All right. So it's important that you really reflect on this. And again, you remember how I said that our wives, they see the symptoms in us for when they're asking us to change something. It's usually because they see a symptom in our behavior, and they want to go after the thing that they think is causing the problem. And it really requires you to do a deeper dive to figure out, like, is there something deeper here that I need to work through? All right. Now, the second impact was unmet expectations. Simply put, your wife may expect you to do something or not to do something, and she is asking you to change so her expectations are met. This is a difficult one to really pinpoint because it is often combined with the unmet need. The distinguishing difference, however, would be that a need is only something you should do for your wife as her husband, where an expectation could be fulfilled by someone else without the lines of adultery being crossed. All right, let me say that again in a different way. An unmet need is something that only you should do, because if someone else does it, then it's usually crossing the lines of adultery. An unmet expectation can be done by someone else, but there's another danger if you allow unmet expectations to constantly be filled or the expectation to be met by someone else. Now, an example of an unmet expectation is you're not calling your wife when you have to work later or go do something, or not helping your wife with the kids if that is something that you're struggling with, right? These are two things you're expected to call your wife. If you're going to work late, you should check in with your wife and be like, hey, I got to work late. Here's what's going on. All right. It's not a demeaning thing for you to call and check in with your wife so that way she's tracking. All right. That's all you're really doing is just letting her know, like, hey, I need to work a little later because I got something going on. You don't have to worry about me. Everything's okay. And then if you're not helping with your kids, that is another issue I won't get into. But I think most men who are listening to this podcast probably understand how that could be an unmet expectation. Now, obviously, with the kids, you can just get a babysitter and it'll work out. There aren't too many options for the calling your wife, but maybe she'll just turn, like while you're not looking, with our new cell phones and stuff like that, turn on tracking, and then she'll just be able to track where you are. And that could cause some other issues. So I'll just keep on moving. Now, the danger of unmet expectations is that if your wife finds someone else to meet them, it is fertile ground for an affair, or at a minimum, grounds to push you away and make you less relevant in her life. Wow. Think about that. It is a way to make you less relevant in her life. I don't think that's what any of you guys want out there. So once you hit a particular level of irrelevance in your wife's life, it will be easy for her to consider divorce or an affair. So unmet expectations actually have a huge impact on your relationship. So you know the reason why from your wife's perspective, and she may just come out and tell you like, hey, the reason why I want you to change is because you're not doing it and I have to get it done somewhere else. And I don't feel like I ever need to ask you to do this again. So you start to lose relevance, or you're doing something and I'm going to divorce you if you don't change, right? you're seeing how unmet needs and unmet expectations are really going deeper. And the thing that she's asking you to change, whatever it may be, physical or emotional, these things all coming together. Hopefully it's helping you see this from a different perspective. Now, even though I talked about unmet expectations and unmet needs as separate things, remember, these can be combined and they can exist at the exact same time. So just be aware of that. Now that leaves you with a choice of determining if the thing your wife is asking you to change is worth keeping or if you should let it go. Right? Now we get to the crux of everything. Now, I don't want to try and cop out on you, but truthfully, this is something that you will have to decide for yourself. And hopefully through, the things that I was recommending, you were able to kind of identify if this is something that you should be changing. But what I would also recommend is you measure whatever the thing your wife is asking you to change against the goals you have set for your marriage. And if you have goals set with your wife, see if that aligns with those goals. If keeping the behavior will result in you achieving your marriage goals, then you may be safe with keeping it, but maybe you need to modify it just a little bit, right? Especially if it's something that is minor and it brings you a level of comfort, whatever it may be. Which that can be its own challenge at times, trying to find our own comfort in marriage. But, we'll just leave that. We'll leave that part alone. Now, to be completely honest, your wife most likely wouldn't be asking you to change something if it was going to get you to your marriage goals. So it might be smart to really look at changing in a genuine way that resonates with you and your wife and meets her unmet need or expectation or both if they both exist. So in short, yes, I think you should change if it is in the best interest of your marriage. You have to think about the best way to serve your wife and build trust between the two of you, because once it's lost, it is hard to regain trust. Now, you're not a single man anymore, and you will have to learn how to rationally compromise with your wife. Like, I can't break that down any further. You have to learn how to rationally compromise with your wife. If you can't figure that out, then you are going to have a tough road ahead of you. Now, if you want to be single, then don't make any changes and stand your ground like a man. But I don't think that's what you want, because you wouldn't be listening to a marriage growth podcast if you did. With this topic, I find that most men struggle with this early in their marriage, and it is their pride that keeps them from overcoming this issue. As you get more intimate in your marriage, you'll see that this is not a big deal, and your marriage will benefit from your change a lot more than if you just hold on to your unwelcome behavior because you want to be stubborn and you want to be like the guys. And if you're getting advice from a single man on how to be married, then you're already getting some bad advice. So don't get advice from a single man on marriage. There's a reason that person is still single, right? Or even if they were divorced. But I'll leave that alone as well. Now, I'm going to leave it there. And until the next episode, I want you to find a way to love your wife every day. Peace.